Hey everyone, so I'd like to talk about a cool weekly board that I've been playing and enjoying a lot. And for some of you who have maybe seen Perfectionist, this puzzle game with blocks, you might have immediately jumped into the daily board simply because, well, it's something that is available daily. It looks less intimidating because there are less blocks. But if you try to go into the weekly board, oh my God, what is this, right? But actually, first of all, initially when I designed Perfectionist, it was designed with this weekly board in mind. And it wasn't weekly, it was actually just a board. But then when I was trying to design a game to sort of sell better, not in terms of money, but just attract more players, I decided that I'm going to come up with like a full board and then kind of a quick board. And then later I call them daily board and weekly. And now this board changes every day, and this board, the other changes every week. But the problem is that actually the daily board has always been really brutal, specifically because you have so few blocks. And so, on the one hand, it's sort of easier to comprehend, like what's happening here at first, but on the other hand, it's less satisfying and it's more grindy because very quickly you run into kind of your immediate limit, and then you have to start optimizing point by point to get anywhere. And there will be some awesome players during the day that will set the record low enough that you can't get beyond it unless you spend a lot of time and you don't even know if it's possible. The weekly board, on the other hand, is actually kind of easier to think about and ultimately is more fun to play because you don't have to think a lot of things through. That's, by the way, another thing is that Perfectionist might feel like it's very kind of opaque in that it's very difficult to think through a lot of permutations, or rather a lot of manipulations several steps forward. Like, okay, I do this, then from 12 I go to 11, then I go here, and then if you go back, it's very difficult to understand that if you do all that, then there's going to be a 3 here. But also, the good news here is that you shouldn't do that because the more modifications you do, the more score you lose, and you don't want to do that. And with larger boards, there's just more satisfaction at connecting these various islands of numbers. And I personally, when I was designing the game, and the reason I decided to spend more time on it and develop it into this fairly presentable app, was that I realized that it's a lot of fun and it's very rewarding to feel how you're getting to know the board and how suddenly something that felt completely impossible, completely alien, or rather something that you just didn't know very much about, now you're beginning to understand its properties. You're beginning to see how the various islands of numbers work, how they can be connected. And then the joy of discovering a sudden connection and realizing, wait a minute, what if I take that number and connect it to that number? And now I've unlocked a whole bunch of possibilities. And so, for this reason, I'm even sometimes thinking that I should redo this game, make it just the weekly board, not call it a weekly board, and just have people really play it, even if it's actually going to be changed every week, really play it for several days. Because that's the kind of puzzle that really rewards playing it several times and trying to improve. So for this week, I improved the score from the initial 41, which was actually already pretty challenging, to then 40, 39. This was yesterday. And then today I was playing it through and I got to 37 and then immediately to 32 because I found a number of connections that were very cool. I want to walk you through this board. And of course, it's very difficult to go back to how I thought about it when I just started out, but at least I can tell you how I'm thinking about it in general. And while there are definitely players out there that can lower the score even more, there are a bunch of folks who are playing the game that I know are way better than me and would typically lower the score to the point that I'd be just left completely shocked that you can go that low. Okay, but 32 is still not bad for a board of 99 blocks. So let's go ahead and talk about it. So the first thing you do, or rather, I'm not going to be giving it like as advice, as universal advice. The first thing that I do personally, typically, is I look at blocks that can be removed at no cost and where it's clear that they're unlikely to be very useful. So for example, the 14th. 14s are that's a lot of score, right? So we range from 1 to 15. That's the block range. This is the smallest one. This is the largest block. And also another important rule, but I'm assuming that folks who are watching the video know the rules, is that ones can be moved around freely. Okay, and so the first thing I do is just remove the blocks which I feel are not helpful uh, to be left there, and at the same time offer a large enough score so that I can just remove them at no costs, right? So these 5 pairs are the only ones that I have removed. I don't see how they could have helped. They didn't match with anything in any row or column that would be potentially interesting. And at the same time, they were high scores where if you're going to start manipulating them, you're going to lose a lot of, you're going to get like a high loss score. Okay, and so then the next bit is usually what I call an opening. And basically, there are several openings here. By opening, I mean a way to make a small change somewhere that unlocks a lot of possibilities. So I'll give you an example. And this example is going to animate a lot of how the board gets unlocked. So let's say that I'm looking at this thing here and seeing, oh, we have a 12 here and a 12 there. And these 12s are blocked by the 5 and a 1. So we need to get rid of these. The idea is that, okay, we can remove the 5s, right? And then we need to remove the 1, but because 1 can be carried anywhere, so this is a powerful block, we need to have a good understanding of where to move it. So how do you unlock that? So I'm looking at these two blocks. I'm reducing 14 to 13. I'm removing these, and suddenly a whole bunch is unlocked. The 9s, I decide to remove these. Although they can be used to produce 1s, I believe that it's cheaper to just remove them for free. There's the 14s. And now look at this. We have 6s right here, and we have 11s right here. That's a lot of score that can potentially be removed. We have a 14 blocking the way. So what do? Well, wait a minute. Look down here. See, there's another 14, and it seems that it's pretty realistic to get rid of it because we don't have that much here. So I take this 1 and I apply it to a 10, and the reason I do it is because I want to take this 4 and place it here. I'll explain later why. So I'm removing the 3s, the 9s, the 14s, and now look at this. We've lost only 4 points, and so much of the board is already gone. So that's kind of cool. Okay, so now why did I want to leave the 3s? Well, there is the thinking here is like frequently I would look at the largest blocks, because if they're left by the end game and I cannot get rid of them, it's going to result in a lot of lost points. So I'm thinking, what if I do this, and then I can match these guys right here? So how do I go about it? Well, let's see. There's a 4 and a 3 here, right? And if I do that, I can remove the 9s. Now, why didn't I use this one? Well, because there's a 7, and this 7, it blocks a lot of things. Let me demonstrate. This is a fairly simple thing to do. Then we have a 12 that goes up here. Why is that important? Now look at this. Look at how beautiful this is. We remove the 4s and we remove the 11s. Then here we have the 13s that we also remove. We take the 1, we remove the 9s. It's a cheap way to unlock all of that. Look at this. Right? Okay, so now this is where the 3s come into play. There was a 3 here, we applied it to 14, and it became an 11. So we remove the 2, clean this thing out. We use these 2 blocks to cheaply create a 1, get rid of the 5s, now get rid of 11s. What else do we have? Well, we have this bit here, 14 and 14, 2 large blocks, and over here, relatively cheaply, we're getting rid of 13s. Then we're applying a 1 to 6. We could have potentially made a 1 out of it, but I feel that's too expensive, so it's cheaper to get rid of this and 14s. And now what we have is 16 blocks left. We enter endgame if we reach 10 blocks and lower. So what I would do here is I would get rid of this. I want to get rid of this, and now I need to get rid of just one block. And honestly, the only thing you can do without losing huge amount of scores is to meld these two. Now we're in the end game, and it's relatively clean. We're getting rid of a lot of blocks, and we're really left with just these two, and boom, 32. So I am pretty sure that folks can still improve it. In fact, I'm still going to play around and kind of try to find some connections, but every connection that I talked to you about was something that I needed to find. So I'm very happy with how I got rid of this 7. For a long time, this 7 stood in the way of a lot of things. I came up, like, you need to come up with everything. It sounds very clean when you're explaining the solution, but honestly, when you start out, none of these connections are necessarily apparent. Like, yeah, you get rid of these things, sure, that's fairly obvious. But now, what do you do? And there are so many options. The reason why the game is called Perfectionist is because you're constantly trying, you're constantly thinking, wait a minute, but is this the perfect way to handle the situation or not? And it is the bigger board that actually really drives home the point of what the puzzle is about. And again, this thing, the optimal score, honestly, it's not necessary. I think it's a good to have, but I don't want to for people to feel bad about like not getting the lowest score. I want them to explore the board because once you explore the board, even if you didn't get the lowest score, when later on at the end of the week you're able to explore the solution, so you go to the latest week's board, you see that somebody got a 67 with this in this particular case, and then you can actually go through the solution and you can see what they did. And so the solution that I showed you right now for this board, it's over here, right? It's on the server. The server has the memory of it, and unless I or someone else improves it, you're going to then be able to see it when the next week comes by. So the new weekly board is generated, and the old one will demonstrate its solution. And I think you can actually admire the solution way more if you have worked with the board and you know like how it works. So I'm again and again coming back to Perfectionist as actually a pretty cool puzzle. It is very deep, I think, in the sense that it's a puzzle that does take your time. Like it's not a casual thing. It's a little bit more like a crossword puzzle where you are really working with a puzzle for quite a bit and you need to take it in and you need to learn the sort of nitty-gritty details of this specific board. And now that I've played with this board, I seem to like know every single block here. Wherever I look, I know every single island of these blocks because I've worked with them for so long, for so many minutes, or even like maybe I would say like I spent at least an hour on this puzzle altogether. And you know, sometimes it's exactly what your brain wants to do, to just dive deeper into some puzzle and into this world of numbers that you're now looking at and thinking, how do I manage that? So anyway, I wanted to share this with everyone. I understand that my channel is not very big, so not many people are watching to begin with, but just in case you seen the game or don't actually even know the game, I suggest you try it and go for the weekly boards. They're much more fun.